Hi, I'm Mandy and welcome to my channel. Today I'll be reviewing Various Daylife, which is a new RPG life sim by Square Enix that popped up seemingly out of nowhere. From the producers of Bravely Default and Octopath Traveler, this charming little game shows a lot of promise for fans of the genre, but the game has received quite a bit of flack online. This is mainly due to the price tag. It goes for $29 on the Nintendo eShop, or 44 Australian, which is on the cheaper side as far as RPGs go, but there's a twist here. And that is that this is actually a console release of a game that was developed for Apple Arcade back in 2019. Now I don't think it deserves to be completely discounted based on that, and trust me, I'm not a fan of mobile games, but despite lacking some polish in some areas, I do think Various Daylife has some potential, and that there's an audience that may really enjoy this game. So I decided to try it out, and now that I've sunk a fair amount of time into the game, I want to give you an in-depth look at the gameplay and overall package so you can really judge for yourself whether you think this is the kind of game you'd be comfortable dishing out the $30 on. First I'll give an overview of the game, and then I'll get into some of my criticisms and recommendations, but I will have some timestamps in the description if you want to jump to certain sections. So let's get started. So Various Daylife is set in a newly discovered continent called Antosia. Your protagonist arrives as a 7th wave colonist and sets up his home base in the city of Erebia. Upon arrival, he's met with the Secretary Gilda, who gives him a rundown on life and work in Erebia. As a 7th wave colonist, he is required to undertake exploratory expeditions for the castle. Gilda introduces him to Bruno, a first-wave colonist and warrior who takes a liking to the hero and wants to recruit him for his expeditionary guild. With this arrangement, we're all set and ready to begin our new life in Erebia, where we'll spend our time juggling different types of freelance work and adventuring expeditions. Gameplay is split between daily life management activities and expeditions. During daily life, you'll have some freedom to send your protagonist off to complete work quests, visit locations around the town, or spend time with party members. This is the time in which you can increase your character's stats, his bond with his allies, and unlock some of the new jobs, of which there are over 20 in total. To progress the main story, you'll need to send your party members out on expeditions. This is the RPG segment of the game, where you'll have the chance to explore the continent outside of Erebia, and fight enemies in turn-based battles. When you go on your first expedition, you'll see that this game is quite different to traditional RPGs. For one thing, there's no field exploration. During expeditions, you'll watch your party walk themselves across the screen, stopping to fight a battle here and there. There's a progress bar on the top right, which reflects the distance they'll need to travel to complete each quest. There are a few things to note about the way that expeditions work. As your characters walk, their maximum HP will start to drain, but just for the current quest. To restore them, you'll need to set up a camp and eat some of the food you've purchased from the vendors in town. It's important to stay on top of this because having a smaller HP limit will put you at a disadvantage as you fight battles further into the level. Now the main gimmick of the battle system in Various Daylife is what they call the 3-char system, which stands for change, chain, and chance, which feels a bit forced if you ask me, but I digress. First, you will change an enemy's status, say by throwing a bucket of water on them to soak them. Then you will chain these status effect changes, perhaps by making Gilda electrify them. The final step is to perform a chance attack, which is an attack that will gain more power depending on how large the chain is. You can chain up to 10, and it will reset once a chance attack has been used, so you'll want to time it carefully. The game will leave notes next to your party members' abilities to help you figure out which attacks will increase the chain and which will activate chance. On top of this system, your characters will also have special moves which you can unlock and power up by increasing the protagonist's affinity with them. You can perform them in battle after that ally meets certain conditions. For example, Gilda needs to perform magic 10 times to do hers, and Ethel needs to instigate change 10 times to do hers. I liked this because it reminded me of the way special moves are activated in Bravely Default, but they're unfortunately nowhere near as complex or customizable. When you're not out on an expedition, you'll spend your time doing various day life tasks, such as sending your character out on work assignments, bonding with party members, and managing stamina and mood, which affect work performance. Various Day Life has some time management aspects, but it's actually not restricted in any way, save for a handful of festivals and birthdays every year, which you'll be asked to complete tasks for. These are the only deadlines, and the penalties for missing them aren't a huge deal, so for that reason, it's actually quite a relaxed game. Accepting work quests are beneficial not only for the money, but also because it's the only way to level up your character. Expeditions and battles yield no experience in this game, which is why the daily life side of it is such a crucial aspect. Different jobs will net you different amounts of experience and contribute to the development of different stats. Each of your stats can be leveled up independently from your main level, and actually, your biggest stat boosts will come from increasing these ranks rather than from increasing your overall level. Leveling up does give a global increase, but to a much smaller extent than ranking up your stats individually. There are daily bonuses available for different stats, which is a great way to maximize the amount of points you're putting into the ones that you want to rank up. But these bonuses also apply to any negative rank changes, so you'll want to keep an eye on that so it doesn't eat up all your progress. There are a variety of freelance job postings available each week, which are categorized by job classes. You can do all of them with any class equipped, but they'll give you stat increases and unlock battle abilities relevant to the field of work that they're in. That is to say, you unlock skills for your secretary class by doing secretary work, warrior skills by doing warrior work, and so on. Like I mentioned earlier, you'll have to manage your stamina and mood to ensure the best work performance. These will affect your accident rate and failure rate respectively. Doing a lot of work can drain your stamina and mood, so you'll want to replenish that by going on outings or resting. However, resting will interrupt an active work chain, which will net some nice experience multipliers. So replenishing mood and stamina by doing things like eating at the tavern, hanging out with friends, or visiting the bathhouse is preferable. Activities around town can also give you different stat points, which is a nice bonus. Okay, so now that we have a good idea of what this game is all about, I'm going to share some of my opinions on it. I do have some criticisms, which I'll get into in the next section, but first I want to talk about some of the things I liked about Various Day Life. Now, two key elements for me when it comes to a game's ability to maintain my engagement are characters and story. The characters in Various Day Life may not be the most interesting or unique characters I've ever met, but they do have personality. I enjoyed talking with them and watching the characters interact with each other in the cutscenes. They actually had more backstory than I expected them to have, which was a nice surprise. The story as well was nothing too special, but it was engaging enough. I looked forward to seeing the advancements in the plot after expeditions, and I liked the way that they made finding new job classes make sense with the character personalities and the overall story. But I do think the story in this game is mainly a vehicle for the gameplay. The best gaming experiences for me will usually have those things the other way around, but I still really enjoyed Various Day Life as a casual, laid-back game to pass time with. The aesthetics of the game really help it achieve this. It's a fantasy RPG setting that we're all so comfortable with. The Bravely Default style character models are a joy to look at, and the music is wonderful. It features a fairly full soundtrack composed by Go Shiina, with unique music for different areas in town and for different seasons. There are even different arrangements for each party member's special moves, which increase in intensity depending on how powerful they are. I'm the kind of person who can get pretty hooked on time management games because I like the consistency of them, and the challenge of trying to maximize my time in the most efficient way. Various Day Life certainly scratches that itch, even though there are very minimal deadlines in the game, which makes it incredibly low stakes. This makes it feel more laid back, but of course also reduces the reward. So I think people who enjoy this style of gameplay need to gauge for themselves whether they think they would find that sort of balance enjoyable or not. Okay, let's get into some of the gripes I have with Various Day Life because it's not a perfect game. Now, one of the big hooks they've been using to advertise the game is the statement that it features over 100 types of daily tasks. This was taken directly from the Nintendo of America Twitter page. Now, on the official game listing, it specified that this refers to 100 types of work, which is much more accurate, but still not as glamorous or impressive as they make it sound. What this statement actually means is that there are over 100 possible work listings that you can unlock. Yes, it's definitely nice to have a variety of options so that you can tackle different skills, but at the end of the day, they're just job postings, and they're essentially all the same activity. You also have to unlock these different types of work, and it starts kind of slow. Even when trying to do a variety of jobs, I felt like I had the same 7 or 8 postings cycling through for the first few hours of the game. I know it's not technically a false statement, but I do think it paints a certain expectation of the game that isn't quite what you're getting. I've seen a handful of people say that, based on the advertisements, the game looks reminiscent of Fantasy Life for the 3DS, and I think those people would be somewhat disappointed. I enjoyed Various Daylife, but it really has nowhere near the amount of freedom and things to do that Fantasy Life had. And so I just don't think that this promise of 100 types of work is the big selling point for the game that they seem to be making it out to be. The second big issue I have, which actually concerns the gameplay, is that the game's tutorial tips are often very poorly written and poorly timed. A good example of what I'm talking about is in the tip about prepare for the date quests. So occasionally you'll be given special work quests that remain on the job board until a certain deadline has passed. The first one you get is a quest to make a birthday present for Ethel. The tutorial tells you, limited time work has appeared. Approach it with a 100% success rate on the day of the work to get the best results. Now, my understanding of this at first was that if I waited until we were closer to the date, the success rate would increase and I would have a better chance to succeed with my craft. I didn't really know what would happen if I attempted and failed, but I didn't want to find out. And with a 0% success rate, it sounded like a guaranteed failure, so why try? So I waited a few days, but the success rate didn't seem to change at all, and at this point I was pretty baffled by the whole thing because it did seem like a weird concept that leaving it to the very last minute would make it better. So I looked it up online, which is how I realized that I was supposed to be doing this work quest multiple times, which would increase the success rate in increments until it reached 100%, at which point the task would be done. So basically the success rate acted more like a progress bar, which was really not intuitive and the tutorial didn't help at all. Unfortunately, my issues with the tutorial didn't end there. So I'd been sending Ryudo, my protagonist, off to work for a while now, and things had been going well. But one day he came back from a successful day at work, did his little victory pose, and then collapsed out of nowhere. Now I had been keeping a close eye on his stamina, but it was only at the halfway point when he came home, which didn't seem sufficient to warrant him collapsing like that. To make it worse, he slept for days and suffered a bunch of penalties to every stat rank on each of those days. And as the cherry on top, I lost my work chain bonus. As you can imagine, this was a very frustrating thing to happen seemingly out of nowhere, and the only thing I could think of was that it was caused by low stamina. It seemed strange, but I assumed that stamina must be able to affect him outside of work, and for some reason the halfway point was the threshold. Then, maybe an hour or so later, I got a new tutorial tip about the work chain bonus, which I was already familiar with, but I read it anyway. It told me, working multiple times without choosing to rest will increase your work chain bonus, which allows you to rake in extra experience points. Your work chain is reset once you choose to rest, or when an accident at work forces a rest. Now, I was well aware that dips in stamina could increase the chance of an accident at work, but I wasn't expecting that to materialize in the way that it did. I guess the spontaneous collapse after work was supposed to signify that he had an accident at work, but it's still so strange because there was no notification about this, and when he came home he had this big grin on his face. The logical flow of that series of events just didn't gel well. These issues I have with the tutorials aren't a huge deal or a game breaker for me, but they did stuff up my workflow. Sometimes it feels like you're learning the game through trial and error, And generally, I think it can be fun when a game doesn't give you too much to go on and lets you learn through experience. But if I'm playing a game that has a lot of tutorial tips, it's a little annoying when they don't work with you. I think if you're gonna help me, don't just complicate things. And finally, my last criticism, which kind of ties in with what I've been discussing thus far, is that the game lacks some polish. We see this in aspects of the gameplay, like the tutorials, but also in the battle system and the daily life stuff. For instance, there's a lantern festival and you have a prepare for the date quest associated with it, which will give you stat rewards and money, but once the date comes, there's no cutscene about it and really no mention of the festival at all. It feels like something is missing there. Graphically too, there are a lot of jumpy scene cuts, it can take some time for clothes to render in, and backgrounds can be pretty blurry. I wish they would have improved these things for the console release, but it is what it is. As a whole package, I did enjoy Various Daylife. Like I said, I tend to get pretty hooked on these sorts of games, and Various Daylife accomplished that. The story and the characters weren't incredibly special, but they were likeable enough to keep me wanting to come back. As a Bravely Default fan, I loved the visual style of the game, and the soundtrack really tied things together to create a very cozy and relaxing experience. That said, I think there are some valid complaints about the game out there, mainly that it lacks polish and substance for its price. I think whether or not this game is worth $30 is a call that you'll have to make for yourself. You might get better bang for your buck elsewhere, but if after everything I've said in this video you're still eager to give this game a try, it might be worth a shot. I don't think this game was made without care. I think that the people involved were likely limited by the constraints of what this project was meant to be, which was a mobile game. It's a little rough around the edges and there are some imperfections, but if you can look past that and you're really in the mood for a relaxed time management game with an RPG aesthetic, you might just enjoy this game. So in summary, I'd say approach with caution. Various Daylife can be a really fun and cozy game to play, but it's not for everyone. Thanks for tuning in for my review of Various Daylife. If you enjoyed this video, I have a few more reviews you might be interested in. I recently posted one about Live Alive, which was a lot of fun to make, but yeah. I hope you have a lovely day, and I will see you next time.